Sophia Carter adjusted the rearview mirror of her silver sedan as the hum of the highway faded behind her. She turned onto a quieter road in suburban Dallas, the evening air thick and heavy. Her sequined gown shimmered faintly under the dim street lights, a reminder of the fundraiser event she had just attended. The night had been spent supporting a local community center she deeply cared about. Sophia was proud of the work they were doing, but more than anything, she was looking forward to getting home to her family. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was her husband, Daniel Carter, the newly appointed police commissioner of Dallas County. Sophia smiled softly. "Be home soon," she murmured to herself, not bothering to pick up the call. Then, the sudden flash of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror caught her attention. A police cruiser. Sophia's brows furrowed as she slowed her car and pulled over to the side of the road. Her mind raced for a reason. She wasn't speeding. She hadn't rolled through any stop signs. She wasn't even on her phone. Maybe it's just a routine stop, she thought, rolling down her window as the officer approached. The officer, a tall man with a stern expression, didn't waste time. "License and registration," he said curtly. Sophia handed over her documents without hesitation. "Good evening, officer. May I ask why I'm being stopped?" The man glanced at her license before looking back at her. His tone clipped. "We got a call about a vehicle matching this description involved in suspicious activity in the area." Sophia's heart skipped a beat. "Suspicious activity," she repeated, her voice steady despite the unease creeping in. "Step out of the car." "Ma'am," the officer said, ignoring her question. Sophia hesitated. "Excuse me? I'm not sure I understand." "Step out of the car. Now," he interrupted, his tone firmer. Another cruiser pulled up behind the first, and two more officers got out, their flashlights cutting through the dark. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she unbuckled her seatbelt and opened the door, keeping her hands visible just as Daniel had taught her. "I'm complying," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I'd like to know why I'm being treated this way." Her calm demeanor seemed to agitate the officers further. One began searching her car without asking permission, rifling through the back seat and trunk. The other two stood close, watching her every move. Sophia's heart pounded. This wasn't right. She had nothing to hide. But the way they treated her, like she was guilty of something, was humiliating. But Sophia wasn't the kind of woman to cower. "I'd like to call my husband," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. One officer scoffed. "You can do that after we're done here." Sophia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She didn't want to escalate the situation. Instead, she silently prayed that someone would intervene before this spiraled further. Little did she know, the situation was about to take a turn that no one could have predicted. Minutes passed, each one feeling longer than the last. Sophia remained silent, standing tall despite the humiliation. She noticed a few cars slowing down as they drove by, their occupants rubbernecking to see what was happening. Then, she heard the sound of a car pulling up. A sleek black SUV rolled to a stop nearby, and the driver's door opened. Daniel stepped out, his tall frame exuding authority. His face was a mask of restrained anger. But what happened next was something neither Sophia nor the officers could have anticipated. Daniel wasn't the type of man to lose his temper easily. Years of experience as a public servant and, most recently, as police commissioner had taught him the value of control, even in the most heated situations. But tonight, seeing his wife standing on the side of the road, surrounded by officers, a look of defiance masking her unease, something inside him burned. He stepped out of the SUV and closed the door firmly, the sound cutting through the tense air. The officers glanced at him, their guarded expressions betraying their surprise at his confident stride. Daniel was dressed sharply in a tailored suit, his police badge clipped to his belt and glinting under the streetlights. "Good evening," he said, his voice calm but edged with authority. "I'm Daniel Carter, Dallas County Police Commissioner. Someone want to explain to me why my wife is being detained and her vehicle searched without cause." The older officer, clearly the one in charge, straightened his posture but didn't quite meet Daniel's eyes. "Sir, we're conducting an investigation. We received a report of suspicious activity involving a car matching this description. Daniel's jaw tightened. Suspicious activity? In a sedan driven by a well-dressed woman coming from a charity event? You do realize you're speaking to Sophia Carter, my wife? The younger officer shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his partner. The older officer cleared his throat. We weren't aware of her identity. Sir, we were just following protocol. Protocol? Daniel repeated, his voice rising slightly. Since when does protocol involve searching someone's car without their consent or probable cause? Did she give you permission to do this? Silence. That's what I thought, Daniel said, taking a step closer. His presence was commanding, and the tension among the officers was palpable. Bystanders had started gathering, some holding up their phones to record. The flashing police lights bathed the scene in an eerie red and blue glow. Sophia finally spoke, her voice steady. Daniel, they wouldn't even let me make a phone call at first. They've been treating me like a suspect from the moment they pulled me over. Daniel turned to her, his expression softening for a brief moment before hardening again as he faced the officers. Do you have any idea what kind of liability you're exposing this department to? He asked. You're harassing an innocent citizen, my wife. No less, without justification. This isn't just unprofessional. It's unacceptable. One of the officers, clearly feeling the heat, stammered. We were just doing our job. Sir, we didn't mean. You didn't mean? Daniel cut him off, his tone sharp. Your actions suggest otherwise. And those cameras, he said, gesturing to the growing number of bystanders recording the scene, will ensure there's no spinning this later. You're going to explain yourselves. Right here, right now. The officers exchanged nervous glances, clearly unsure how to proceed. The older officer stepped forward, attempting to regain control. Commissioner Carter, we need to de-escalate the situation. Perhaps we can discuss this back at the precinct. Daniel let out a short, humorless laugh. De-escalate? You want to de-escalate now? After humiliating my wife and violating her rights? No, we're addressing this here. In public, exactly where you created this mess. By now, the crowd had grown larger, people murmuring, some expressing their disbelief. Sophia stood quietly, her posture composed, but her eyes betrayed her exhaustion. Call your supervisor, Daniel ordered. Now. The older officer hesitated, but ultimately reached for his radio, his demeanor reluctantly compliant. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of accountability pressing down on the officers as they awaited their superior's arrival. But what happened when the supervisor arrived would turn this already tense situation into a breaking point for everyone involved.